I believe that far too many of us have given up on the idea of happiness. For most of us, happiness seems to be something you can only find in a fairy tale that was written for kids or people who are too naive to truly understand that the reality of life is struggle, the reality of life is suffering and continual turmoil, trials and tribulations. And to be honest with you, I completely understand that worldview because within myself, within my own experiences, I remember being disappointed every time that I believed happiness was right around the corner. Example, when I was a kid and I was playing basketball, believe it or not, at the height that I am, I was a hooper and I was serious about my craft. I was serious about my sport. And it brought me a sense of joy when I played the game, but I would have this feeling as if I was going to be happy each time I bought those new shoes. So I would look to, a future date, maybe 2 or 3 months, whenever my parents would say they would finally give me the shoes, or when I would save up enough money to get those new hooping shoes. And I would feel a sense of exhilaration, waiting for the shoes, waiting, thinking about the joy that I would experience once I had them, the lasting joy I'd experience. And the time would come closer and closer, and I was excited like a kid before Christmas, believing that I was finally going to have my fulfillment. Finally, I was going to feel a sense of joy that would last me. And then the day would come and finally I would get that box in my hands and it was at the register and it was getting paid off and these shoes were mine. They were finally mine to experience, to enjoy. And I would open that box and look at these shoes and think to myself, finally I got my happiness. Finally, I have my sense of true lasting joy. And it would take no more than 1 to 2 weeks until I was completely over it. As a matter of fact, I would not only find myself in a place where I no longer had that excitement or exhilaration, but these had just become a part of my everyday. These have become the norm. These have just become the old shoes now. And you may view that as maybe that's a lack of appreciation or gratitude, but in truth, what it was for me was my expectation of the external thing bringing me a sense of internal happiness. And this is a place where a majority of us find ourselves. We find ourselves seeking happiness in all the wrong places. We believe that if we look out there, we will find our happiness. And so we get in relationships thinking that somebody is going to bring us joy. Somebody is going to bring us a lasting happiness so long as they continue to keep their eyes on us and validate us and pour us with their, continue to pour out their love upon us, that we will feel joy. And yet, we are disappointed either when those expectations are broken or we're disappointed when they do those things, and yet we still feel that void. We still feel empty within ourselves. So we go to things, we go to careers, we go to places, we set vacations up, right? We buy the next iPhone or the next version of the car that we have. We get the job of our dreams and we feel finally this is going to bring me happiness. And when we find that they don't, we become disappointed. And in most cases, we become jaded about life, believing that we've been let down by this false promise, this illusion of happiness, when in reality, we were searching in the wrong place. Now, I want to share just a quick little story that has stuck with me throughout the years. And it's basically this myth about when the gods created humankind. And so the gods basically came together and said, now, where shall we hide the treasure of mankind? Where shall we place the brilliance, the divinity of mankind? And so some of them came together and basically created this idea or concept that they would place it on the top of the highest mountain because nobody would ever find it at the highest mountain. And so they came together and discussed it and finally came to agreement that no, mankind is far too curious. They will seek the top of the mountain. One day they will eventually explore the top of the mountain and find it with ease. And so they came together and discussed again. And a few of them decided that maybe they should put at the bottom of the oceans, the depths of the oceans where no man will ever travel. And yet when they came together again, they realized that mankind's curiosity would definitely lead them to the bottom of the ocean. And so they came together once again and finally came to a consensus. And they said the one place that mankind would never, ever look for their treasure, never look for their brilliance, never look for their divinity is within. And so that's exactly where the gods placed man's divinity. And from that moment on, well, obviously it's a myth, but it might as well be reality because most of us, if not all of us as a society, have been conditioned and programmed into believing that we are to go outside, we are to go externally for the things that are truly already within us. We are seeking happiness all around us. We're seeking happiness in a moment, in an experience, in a person, in a purchase, in a material possession. And yet we are disappointed time and time again, not because happiness does not exist, not because happiness is a fairy tale or a myth, but because happiness can only be experienced within. And when I talk about happiness, a lot of people like to, fight for their limitations, right? They like to hold on to their limiting beliefs with such fervor, such passion. And so they'll say to themselves, well, look at my conditions, look at my circumstances. How can I be happy with these circumstances that are around me? Well, first and foremost, we are the manifester of our life experience. We create our experience through our emotion, our thoughts, and our words. But that's a time for a different space and a different place and a different place. I ain't going to talk about that right now, but what I want to get into is this. Even if you're in the most dire circumstances, if it seems as if everything around you is against you, you can still make the decision to be happy. Keyword decision. You can make the decision to be happy regardless of your circumstances. And we've heard stories of, like the genocide in Rwanda and these women who are locked in this bathroom for like 6 months. And, one of them details how she went through an experience of deep anger and resentment, and these people were killing her family. She had to hide in this bathroom, couldn't do anything, was literally every day afraid for her life. And there was a turning point when she saw herself becoming the very thing that she was hating. And so she realized that each time she would forgive and put herself on a place of letting go, putting herself in a space of choosing to experience a different internal state, it was as if she was free. As a matter of fact, she said she was more free than she had ever been in her entire life before the genocide had ensued. And so we have that, and the Viktor Frankls, who were in Auschwitz and went through these tragic experiences, yet they were able to find a liberation and a freedom within their circumstances. The Nelson Mandela's 26 years wrongly incarcerated, and they were able to make a decision to experience joy. And that joy, that experience that we were having within, manifested externally into their outward experience. And so us who are living, most of us are probably in a place where we have like external freedoms. We can, move about as we desire to. Regardless of what situation and circumstance we are confronting or we are facing or we are looking at, we can make the decision to see it differently. And happiness is a state of consciousness. It's a state of being. It's a state of awareness. It is you recognizing things from a higher state, from a higher point of view. You're getting a bird's eye view as opposed to like an ant's view, right? Most of us are so close to a problem that we can't actually see it from a higher perception, from a higher perspective. And once we are willing to make the decision to see it from a different perspective, that is when we experience a peace, a joy that is undescribable. Ancient mystics and spiritual teachers, they speak of this peace that is within. They speak of the silence that is within, that is greater than anything you will ever experience. Be still and know God. Like that experience can only be described with so many words because words will not do it justice. And yet it is only a place we can reach by making a decision that matters more than our, I hate to say it, but our decision to stay in the same negative cycles that we are currently in. And so this video is about how to be happy, but I had to set the premise first to say, what is happiness and what does it actually look like? And is it true? Is it real? Yes, it is. I had to go through and make sure to break down those, belief systems that you've built over a lifetime that are telling you that this is BS. Even though I'm watching this, I don't really believe it. There's a deeper part of you that recognizes the true core of who you are, the essence of your being, that knows that this is true, that knows this is real, and knows that it is something that is within. And the only way we can get to that place, that we can get to that point, of experiencing the everlasting joy, everlasting happiness. Not saying you never struggle or go through a situation or feel pain, but it will overcome, supersede. It would be above all conditions and circumstances. The only way we can get to that point is by making the decision. And once you make a decision that happiness matters more than anything else, that your peace and your joy matters more than anything else, and that you're not to fix anything externally because your external life is just a reflection of your internal life, when you make that decision, the choices become easy. And the choices are what builds the habit of choosing happiness in a moment. So an example of this is, in a moment, you can choose to either complain or be grateful. And each time you choose to be grateful, it's like building a gratitude muscle. You're building out the muscle that is building out a life of happiness, a life of joy, a life of peace. Each time we choose the light instead of the darkness, we are building the muscle of happiness. We are building that muscle. And it is a habit just like anything else. The forms or the patterns of thought we have are nothing but habits. The belief systems that we have are nothing but thoughts we thought over and over and emotionalized at a high state over and over and over again. Therefore, we can make a conscious decision to choose a different thought each and every time. And when we make a decision is when you ground yourself, and the choices are basically what leads to the outcome that we desire. So when we make that decision, we staple ourselves, we burn the boats behind us, we start to make choices that align with that decision. And those choices become so easy to make because you've already set yourself in an intention that I am going to choose my bliss. I am going to choose my happiness. I am going to choose my peace. And again, this may sound crazy, but it's only sounding crazy or ridiculous or unrealistic to the part of you that has been programmed into believing that life is supposed to be a struggle. Life is supposed to be suffering. You know, there's a quote or many quotes and many teachers who have taught this idea of, you might not be able to avoid the quote unquote pain of something, but you can eradicate suffering, because suffering is the state of mind, the state of consciousness, right? We suffer when we hold on to an expectation, or we suffer when we try to manipulate and control the situation as opposed to accepting it or letting it go. When we choose to be resentful and bitter as opposed to forgiving a situation, letting it go and letting them go completely. When we make those type of decisions, we are choosing our peace in the moment. And it becomes the default after we make that a practice and a habit for ourselves. And if it seems like a lot of work, I'm going to tell you this. You're going to have to work some way in some direction anyway. Like if you don't want to do this work, you're going to have to do the work of dealing with the traumas, the continual patterns, the continual pain, the continual frustrations, the continual anger, the continual resentment that you're going to live with if you choose not to be conscious, not to live a life of true awareness. So the choice is yours. The time is going to pass and you're going to have the life experiences regardless. So do you want to continue having a life based on those pains, based on the hurts, based on the trauma? Or are you willing to make the decision, the conscious decision, to choose something different within your own life experience?